Welcome to another installment of Donning the Armor. This morning we will begin in chapter 13, verse 1. Again, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. Now, here, once again, we had Jephthah, 6 years as judge. Then we went through a couple of minor judges, Isban, Elon, Abdon. We had these 3 minor judges judging for minor amounts of time. And even with all that, we once again find the children of Israel backslidden in the evil, pushing him to the side, forsaking him to cast off and cast their lots in with the demonic pagan deities of those around them. Those deities that wish for child sacrifice. Child sacrifice so that you could go forth and be successful in business, to appease your sexual desires, sacrificing children, sacrificing other humans, the wickedness of the most wicked people, things that are unconscionable in our time now, turning from the God of love to the villainous attempts of the enemy to destroy that love and tear us away from the Father. Now there was a certain man from Zorah, of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Indeed, now you are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Now therefore, please be careful not to drink wine or similar drink, and not to eat anything unclean, for behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. And no razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. Now, if you remember back to Leviticus, we learned about the Nazarite vow and the different complications they had to consecrate themselves to the Lord. They had to not cut their hair, not drink of the vine, not do anything that would make them ceremonially unclean, not to be near a dead body, not to touch anything dead. If somebody died next to them, they would then have to end their vow, shave their head, go through all the appointments, and everything that they had done would not be accounted for righteousness to them because they did not complete their vow, the time of the vow that they have had as a Nazarite. Normally they'd say, I will commit myself as a Nazarite to you, Lord, for a year, for 6 months. This angel of the Lord that the New King James has in capitals, capital A, capital Lord as in Yahweh, that this is a theophany, a Christophany, Jesus Christ in his glorified form appearing to this woman, appearing as a man, saying, you will have a child. You are barren now, but you will conceive a son. And from the moment he was born, he shall be a Nazarite. And we see this again in the New Testament with John the Baptist, a Nazarite from birth, living in the wilderness, being consecrated fully unto the Lord, to be the herald of the Messiah. So the woman came and told her husband, saying, a man of God came to me, because she views him as a prophet. She views him as somebody speaking on behalf of God. She does not see him as an angel. She sees him as a person. And his countenance was like that of the angel of God. So she's saying he was very much like a messenger straight from heaven. This prophet was very awesome. But I did not ask his name, where he was from, or did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. And he said to me, behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. Now drink no wine or similar drink, nor eat anything unclean, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. So for the entirety of his life, he is to keep this Nazarite vow, this holy and righteous and difficult walk through life. This man told me this incredible thing. He looked like the angel of God. He looked as though he had this countenance about him, as we have heard recounted in the law of Moses, that we've heard recounted from the stories of Joshua. That's what we saw. This is what I believe I've encountered. Then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, "O Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent to us come again and teach us what we shall do for the child who will be born." So his wife is saying all these things, and Manoah possibly not trusting his wife. I mean, I've heard people mention that Manoah just didn't trust what his wife said, that he never trusted what she said. Possibly, or like Zechariah, it was too good to be true. It was too over the top. So he couldn't understand it. He couldn't wrap his mind around it. But he did what we should do when we're exposed to something we can't quite understand. We turn to the Lord. We pray to the Lord. Lord, I know I heard from you. I know I feel this in me. But is this truly from you? Is this me imagining this, or is this truly from you, Lord? I don't doubt you. I doubt myself. Am I truly hearing from you? And God listened to the voice of Manoah. He didn't rebuke him. He didn't turn him away. He didn't ignore him. He listened to the voice of his child. And the angel of God came to the woman again as she was sitting in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. Then the woman ran in haste and told her husband and said to him, "Look, the man who came to me the other day has just now appeared to me." So Manoah arose and followed his wife. When he came to the man, he said to him, "Are you the man who spoke with this woman?" And he said, "I am." Manoah said, "Now let your words come to pass. What will be the rule of life and his work?" So once again, God, not without his own sense of messing with people, I guess you could say. Manoah prays to the Lord, but he still sends the angel of the Lord back to the wife, because apparently Manoah does have a habit of not listening to his wife fully and maybe not trusting her completely. He has this desire to see for himself everything that happens. And that's a completely understandable thing and something we all fall into, that we want to see things for ourselves, not just take the word of someone else. But the nature of faith is taking someone else's word and not being able to see with your own eyes. It's an experiential faith that we have. We feel it. We can sense it with almost a sixth sense for the spiritual when we open our heart to the Lord. But he's not here in front of us. We are trusting on the testimonies of others, the gospel's testimonies, the eyewitness statements of those who were there. There was once a question asked in the children's ministry when I volunteered. What is the New Testament? What is the Old Testament? What does testament mean, is what the child asked. Now, the answer given by the instructor, trying to understand really what the child meant, they were saying, well, the Old Testament is this, the New Testament's this. But I think she was just curious what the word testament itself meant. And a testament is a testimony. It is a witness statement. And both the Old and New Testaments are the witness statements of the people who lived through the times and sights and apparitions of the Lord, the workings of the Lord. This is their eyewitness statement. Each of the four Gospels written by people through the words of witnesses. Luke was not a disciple. John Mark was not a disciple, but they were exposed to people who were. and lived in that time where they were able to ask them what they happened, what they experienced, what they saw and heard. The same for the Old Testament, getting the writings of Moses, getting the writings of Joshua, getting the writings of Samuel, getting the writings of these prophets, of Daniel, of Nehemiah, of these different people who work throughout the ages, who experienced the blessings and workings of the Lord. And these people, these testimonies are what we have today. And our faith is built off of the trust we have in them. And then the experiential faith that we have in seeing the blessings and the workings of the Lord in our life and in our lives, in the lives of the ones we love, to see his work come true, to see people transformed, to see someone you once knew look completely different than they once did. And the only change that came over their life was the name of Jesus. They had a life before and a life after, and that dividing line was Christ Jesus. So Manoah wants to see with his own eyes and not just listen to the testimony of his wife. It's a very human reaction. But as the angel of the Lord will say to him, when he asks, what will the boy's rule of life be? What is his work? What is he being consecrated for because of the Nazirite vow? So the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, of all that I said to the woman, let her be careful. She may not eat anything that comes from the vine, nor may she drink wine or similar drink, nor eat anything unclean. All that I commanded her, let her observe. Then Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, please let us detain you, and we will prepare a young goat for you. So the angel of the Lord basically says to Manoah, the boy is going to be brought up with everything I've already told your wife. You make sure she follows this stuff. But you, everything else, listen to your wife. I have told her everything you need to know. Listen to her testimony over what the Lord had for her to explain to her about your coming child. And Manoah says, please let us detain you. Let us be hospitable to you. Let us prepare this young goat for you. As we have read all through the Old Testament to this point, hospitality brought forth great honor in these Near East cultures. Abraham entertaining the three angels. Lot entertaining the angels, so much so that he was willing to throw his daughters out to a violent mob so that the angels would be, so that the messengers of God would be safe from these people, so the hospitality wouldn't be broken, which is where we get people who will say that the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah wasn't sodomy, which is named after it, but that it was inhospitality that was the problem. If that was the case, the Old Testament world would have been a sheet of glass, because inhospitality was all over the place, not just Sodom and Gomorrah. It was specifically their sexual sin, not just their inhospitable, whatever, you know what the word I was saying, being inhospitable to people. And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, though you detain me, I will not eat your food. But if you offer a burnt offering, you must offer it to the Lord. For Manoah did not know he was the angel of the Lord. They believe this is just a man of the Lord, just a prophet coming to bring them word. So he wants to feast with them. He wants to share a meal with them, much like Gideon did. Say, here, let me bring you an offering. He said, I will accept it, though. If you offer a burnt offering, you must offer it to the Lord. Then Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, "What is your name, that when your words come to pass we may honor you?" And the angel of the Lord said to him, "Why do you ask me my name, seeing it is wonderful?" So this appearance of the angel of the Lord with Manoah is one of the strongest ones that Christian commentators will often say is an example that this must be a pre-incarnate Jesus Christ in that glorified body that he would appear to the disciples with later, in that form where he could walk with his own disciples at Emmaus and they wouldn't recognize him, where he could sit on the seashore cooking fish and calling out to the men on the boat and them not recognize him. That this is this because he's saying, "I won't eat with you, but offer it to the Lord." What is your name? Why do you ask my name, seeing it is wonderful? Because as we see in Isaiah, he will come and be called wonderful. The Messiah will come and be called wonderful. Will be called Emmanuel, will be called God among us. Seeing my name is wonderful, why do you ask it? So Manoah took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it upon the rock of the Lord. And he did a wondrous thing while Manoah and his wife looked on. It happened as the flame went up toward heaven from the altar. The angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar. When Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell on their faces to the ground. When the angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and his wife, then Manoah knew that he was the angel of the Lord. So the angel of the Lord disappeared as the burnt offering was offered before him. You know, this starts to show a little bit of a thing people will see as contradictions in the Bible. That they are told that they are only to offer at the tabernacle. That the priest is the one to do the offering specifically. But here you have the Lord, possibly a Christophany, a pre-incarnate Jesus Christ, telling Gideon to give a burnt offering. Now, when he offered it outside his house, the angel of the Lord is the one that consumed it. So technically, Gideon wasn't burning the offering there. But he did in the middle of the night, which is why he thought he was fit to make an ephod for himself. Here you see the angel of the Lord telling Manoah to create an offering, a burnt offering for him. Not at Shiloh, not here. And this could be seen as, well, God is contradicting his rules. He's being contradictory and telling them to do one thing and doing another in a different place. But really, it more seems to be these people have fallen into wickedness. And the Lord is allowing them to use the altars that they have created to do these things at these special occasions. Because this is a one-time thing. Manoah and his wife are never going to do this again. Every once in a while, we see things that are not prescriptions for a greater sense of the faith and worship of the Lord, but something that is allowed at one moment in time because of a very special circumstance. And this happens to be one of those. And Manoah said to his wife, "We shall surely die because we have seen God." I don't think Manoah's quite getting it yet, because God literally just told him he was going to have a kid. Now he's afraid he's going to die because they have seen God. They've been in the presence of God. But although he's not understanding it, it is something the Israelites said even when they saw God at the first at Sinai. We have seen God, we are surely going to die now. We, in our uncleanness, in our sin, in our abomination, have been in the presence of the Lord. And because he sees our sin and our wickedness and our filthiness, he is going to destroy us from before his sight. But the voice of reason speaks up. But his wife said to him, if the Lord had desired to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering from our hands. Nor would he have shown us all these things, nor would he have told us such things as these at this time. Saying if he wanted to kill us, he would have. But clearly, because he's accepted our offering and has not turned it away, because he's shown us these things and told us these things, clearly he's not going to kill us. Clearly he means these things for our good. So the woman bore a son and called his name Samson. And the child grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to move upon him at Manaah Dan, between Zorah and Eshtal. So the name Samson, people believe it really means strength, or that it means sun, like sunlight. That he was a light of their lives after having been barren. He was the strength of their family. Commentators have argued about what it actually means, because there is no person named Samson before it to take a meaning from it, kind of idea. But here they have accepted that the Lord has placed this man upon them, that the Lord has come before them. An amazing feat, blessing, and responsibility being given to them. To make a barren woman have a child. An amazing blessing in allowing her to have a child when you were seen as accursed when you didn't have one. That if you didn't have a child, surely God was cursing you. But then an amazing responsibility to raise a child in this Nazirite vow from birth to death. I wonder how often the child Samson may have had broken his vow. Remember, you can break a Nazirite vow and then restart it. I wonder if there was ever a time, not that there was, but if there was ever a time that he had to have broken his vow and restarted as a child. It reads as though he hasn't. But you got to wonder if maybe he had restarted it at some point. Or if maybe because he hadn't, his arrogance begins to grow. Because now we have a grown Samson, a young man, brave, bold, seemingly entitled, and believing that he should be especially granted things where others aren't. So, as we move on to chapter 14. Now Samson went down to Timnah, and saw a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. So he went up and told his father and mother, saying, I have seen a woman in Timnah, the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me as a wife. I want that as my wife. So go make an offer to her parents, and bring her to me. I want that woman. She is pleasing to me. Then his father and mother said to him, Is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren, or among all my people, that you must go and get a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? Remember, they're not supposed to intermarry with unreligious Jews. They're not supposed to marry people outside of the faith. And saying, are there no daughters of your brethren? Are there no women among the tribes that you now have to go and marry this unbeliever? Not just an uncircumcised unbeliever. Of course, women do not get circumcised. The idea being that they are not covenantally bound to the Lord. And from our enemies, the Philistines, who are oppressing us? Why them? And Samson said to his father, Get her for me, for she pleases me well. That's where the entitlement seems to come in. He believes he is better than anyone, so he should get exactly what he wants. And as we'll see, his strength has not come upon him. His supernatural strength has not been something he's used to this point, seemingly. But his father and mother did not know that it was the Lord, that he was seeking an occasion to move against the Philistines. For at that time, the Philistines had dominion over Israel. So they didn't know it's actually the Lord instigating this sequence of events. That he is the one putting this idea in the head of Samson to take a wife from the Philistines. Because the Lord is looking for an occasion to use this judge against the people oppressing his chosen children. So Samson went down to Timnah with his father and mother and came to the vineyards of Timnah. Now, to his surprise, a young lion came roaring against him. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he tore the lion apart as one would have torn apart a young goat, though he had nothing in his hand. But he did not tell his mother or father what he had done. So seemingly this is the first experience he has had with this great and mighty power. This first experience by a man who probably looks like a lion himself. Uncut hair, even if it is kempt, even if it is kept up and he is taking care of it as best he can in those days. He probably has a giant mane of hair himself. And he has this lion leap at him. And he tears it apart. The Spirit of the Lord showing him what power he possesses. And a foreshadowing to himself of what he can do in the future to the Philistines. A foreshadowing by God showing him that this is the strength you possess. This is the power you have. You've been told you were different by your parents because of this Nazirite vow. Now I want to show you just how different you are. Just how powerful you are. Just what you're capable of. Just what kind of might you have. But he doesn't tell his mother and father. He lets it go. Keeps it to himself. Samson is a very prideful person, we can see. He very much seems to be somebody who wants and wants and wants. And when he believes he wants something, he feels he should get that something. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson well. After some time, when he returned to get her, he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and behold, a swarm of bees and honey were in the carcass of the lion. So now they've agreed on the dowry. They've agreed on the engagement, on the betrothal. Now what would happen is they would return home. He would build a room onto his father's house as a way to start his new life with his new bride. And when that work is finished, he would return to get the bride. But now as he's coming back, he sees the carcass of that lion he ripped apart. And there's a swarm of bees having a honeycomb inside of it. Now, since it's been some time, the carcass of the lion is probably not an actual body. It's probably skeletal, but it's still dead, and he's still not to touch it. He took some of it in his hands and went along eating. When he came to his father and mother, he gave some to them, and they also ate. But he did not tell them that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. He didn't tell them where he got the honey. He didn't tell them that he had just broken his Nazirite vow by touching an unclean, dead creature. Honey, one of the few foods, honey and milk, the only two foods created from life that does not require death. But he took it from a den of death, from the carcass, from the skeletal remains of a lion. Or, if there still is skin and bone on it, although probably not after this long, if it's been at least a couple weeks, that's even more nasty. That's even more of a if you want to go in varying degrees of breaking the not touching dead, clean, unclean dead stuff, if it still had skin on it, even if it was pulled tight, now you're talking about something even more known to not be something he's allowed to do. So his father went down to the woman, and Samson gave a feast there. For young men used to do so. And it happened, when they saw him, that they brought 30 companions to be with him. So he goes down with his parents. They have a feast, and the young man of the town showed up. They have 30 companions. And Samson wants to play a little game. He's now ripped a lion in half. He's powerful. He's entitled. He's a bit of a brat. Then Samson said to them, "Let me pose a riddle to you. If you can correctly solve and explain it to me within the 7 days of the feast, the 7 days of the bridal feast, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing. But if you cannot explain it to me, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing. So a bet for a bet. You give me this if you can succeed. Whether you win or I win, then that's how we'll divvy up the clothes, the spoils of the bet, of our little gamble." And they said to him, "Pose your riddle that we may hear it." So he said to them, "Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet." Now for 3 days they could not explain the riddle, because it's not a riddle they would ever come up with. It was a riddle born of something he simply experienced on his own. So there's no way to have solved the riddle. It was the perfect riddle to fool them. But he forgot who he was dealing with in a way. But it came to pass on the 7th day that they said to Samson's wife, "Entice your husband that he may explain the riddle to us, or else we will burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you invited us in order to take what is ours? Is that not so?" He forgot he was dealing with the Philistines. He forgot he was dealing with these vicious oppressors, these violent people for whom the lives of their own children are meaningless. So the lives of his newly minted wife and her father's house means nothing to them. Saying, "You guys invited us to this wedding feast. Did you invite us to rob us, to take what is ours? So you figure out this riddle and tell us, or we will kill you." Then Samson's wife wept on him and said, "You only hate me. You do not love me. You have posed a riddle to the sons of my people, but you have not explained it to me." So she manipulates him. She manipulates him by playing on his conscience, on his love for her, his lusts. She claims that she is hated by him because he has not even told her the answer to this riddle. She manipulates him into giving her the answer. Manipulating people does not end well. And it will not end well here. It only breeds contempt. It may work for you, as it works for his wife here, but it breeds contempt and eventually hatred, which we will also see it breed. And he said to her, "Look, I have not explained it to my mother or father. So should I have explained it to you?" Saying, "Look, I haven't even explained it to my parents. Why would I explain it to you? I'm not explaining it to anybody. It's my riddle." Now she had wept on him 7 days while their feast lasted. And it happened on the 7th day that he told her, because she pressed him so much. When she explained the riddle to the sons of her people, or then she explained the riddle to the sons of her people. So the men of the city said to him on the 7th day before the sun went down, what is sweeter than honey and what is stronger than a lion? And he said to them, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. So he's saying, had you not gone after my wife, you would not have solved my riddle. Had you not gone and threatened her and worked with her to manipulate me, had you not gone after my wife, you would not have solved this riddle. Basically, you cheated. You didn't solve the riddle. You had her manipulate me into doing it. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily, and he went down to Ascalon and killed 30 of their men, and took their apparel, and gave the changes of clothing to those who had explained the riddle. So his anger was aroused, and he went back up to his father's house. And Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man. So the Spirit of the Lord came upon him to murder 30 people. And this is what I was mentioning with Jephthah. Would the Spirit of the Lord still allow him to sacrifice the life of his daughter if he's in the Spirit of the Lord? Well, in this case with Samson, the Spirit of the Lord is looking to remove the Philistine oppression from his people. These are Philistines. These are not good people. These are not innocent people. Unbelievers will bemoan this all day long, that God genocides innocent people because they still think people are innocent. The Bible tells us there are no innocent among the people who the Israelites slayed to a man, woman, and child. The Philistines were not innocent. The Lord is not so much giving him permission to be vengeful and envious and wicked, but he is using Samson as a tool to avenge the oppression of his people, to remove the oppression from them. God doesn't always use the tools of the most righteous people in the world. Paul is one of our greatest examples of what it is to walk in the ways of Christ, of how to walk that narrow path in such a great, powerful way for the Lord. He was also a person who murdered and persecuted Christians. Peter was a hothead fisherman from Galilee. Nebuchadnezzar, a pagan king. Same with Cyrus. Jephthah, the bastard son of a harlot. Again and again and again, God uses imperfect people, broken people, to do his will, because we are simply the tools in his masterpiece. And he uses what we wish. The Pharaoh became God's tool to show his sovereignty over the false pagan idols of the Egyptians by giving the Pharaoh over to what he wished to do, to the wickedness in his own heart. He gave him over to that wickedness and allowed him to continue oppressing the Israelites, because that's what Pharaoh wanted. So the Lord gave it to him. The Philistines want violence. They want power. They want wickedness. They desire it. And the Lord is going to give it to them. And they've allowed them to oppress these people 40 years. They will end up oppressing the Israelites. 40 years. But as the Lord said to Peter, those who live by the sword die by the sword. You want to live with that sword in your hand, you will die by it as well. And the Philistines wanted to live with the sword in their hand. They were a wicked people, conquering and killing and enslaving and subjugating. So their death would come just as violently. We'll see it again with the Assyrians. We will see it again with the Babylonians. We will see it again with the Persians. Each and every time, violence met with violence to the end of their nation. The Philistines will be no different. These Philistines want to violate the sacred covenant of marriage by turning a husband and wife against each other. So much so that Samson leaves his wife. And so that she's not defiled, she's given over to his friend, his companion, who has been his best man at his wedding, so that she would not be defiled and left undesirable in that ancient Near East culture. The Lord is using a mighty tool. A tool with uncontrollable rage, who is selfish and prideful and in his own way wicked and vain. And the Lord will allow him to follow this to fulfill his own actions unto his own death. Yet he still ends up in the hall of faith in Hebrews. Because in his own strange way, he still followed the workings of the Lord and didn't rebel fully against him, even if he broke his vow time and time again and ended up into his lusts time and time again. Backslidden, broken, blinded by his own vanity and pride and lust, but still ends up in the hall of faith. So it was written, saved soul, wasted life. Samson's soul was saved by the grace of God, but did he ever waste his life on earth? And I'm sorry, but as much as I want to see my soul saved, above all things, well, I'll be perfectly honest, I want to see my children's soul saved above all things. And then my soul saved. But as much as I want to see my soul saved, I never want to hear anybody say that I wasted my life. That although God has seen fit to accept me because of the blood of Christ, that I wasted my life on the vanity of the world because my pride and ego became a snare and a crutch and a false sense of strength. I want to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. Not, your soul was saved, but you wasted your life. We have so many examples, not just in the Old Testament, but also in the New, but especially the Old Testament, of what not to be. We have an indwelling of the Holy Spirit. Samson simply had it upon him. And his soul was saved, but he wasted his life. We have the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. We are that much closer to the Lord. Let's not waste our lives. Honor them by being living sacrifices for the man whose grace and love, loyalty, granted us what we have in eternity with a loving Father. With a loving Father who is going to give us a home. Don't ever let it be said that we wasted our lives, that our souls may have been saved, but all we ever went after, all we tried to amass for ourselves, was the vanity of this world, because we compromised the majesty and glory of God for the fleeting, prideful trinkets of the world. Anyway, that's where we shall end it for this morning. I hope this was fruitful for you. I hope to see you back again next time. But until then, be blessed.